Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to our information session for the 2025 Professional Development Cycle. My name is Sonia Teese. I'm the Manager of Quality Assurance with CRPO, and I'm joined by my colleagues Madeline Lee, who is the Senior Coordinator in Quality Assurance, and Hannah Petrovic, who is our bilingual assistant. Some housekeeping items before we begin. We are anticipating a larger number of participants for this meeting. So for that reason, we ask everyone to keep your video and microphones off. In addition, if you require closed captioning, you can turn that on by clicking the captions icon, or if there isn't an icon at the bottom of the screen, you might need to tap the More option, and then you can access captions from there.
So we will begin this afternoon with a land acknowledgement. CRPO recognizes that its work takes place across the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations throughout the province, now known as Ontario. This land is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements, reflecting the enduring presence and rights of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. CRPO offices is located in Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands.
So today's information session is specifically for anyone registered in 2023 who will be reporting their professional development activities for the first time this year. In today's session, we will briefly describe all areas of CRPO's QA program that you need to be aware of. However, the main focus will be on the professional development or PD cycle. We will explain what the PD cycle is, what can be included as a professional development activity, how to complete the QA attestation form, and how to request a deferral or an extension. We will also briefly discuss what happens if a registrant does not respond to the college or is non-compliant. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. We've incorporated those questions into today's presentation, and if there's time, we will do our best to answer any questions that you have. If you're entering questions into the chat, and at the end, we'll probably have time to take questions from the room as well. We won't be discussing registration requirements or practice-related questions, but we will be providing you with email addresses at the end of the presentation so you can reach out to the appropriate department. We are recording today's session, and we will post it on our website along with the slides. And finally, if you have a question that's not answered today, you're always welcome to email us at qa@crpo.ca. So all regulated health professionals in Ontario have a responsibility to maintain the necessary knowledge, skill, and judgment, or ongoing competence in their profession to provide safe and effective care to Ontarians throughout their careers. And CRPO has a responsibility to establish a quality assurance program and monitor registrant participation in QA activities. The framework that CRPO must abide by in establishing a quality assurance program is set out in the Regulated Health Professions Act and in the Quality Assurance Program Regulation under the Psychotherapy Act. The Quality Assurance Committee, which is made up of professional members and members of the public, provides oversight of the QA program. The QA committee established the policies that guide how we administer the program. CRPO's quality assurance program promotes continuing competence and assures the public that registered psychotherapists are committed to lifelong learning and providing safe, client-focused care. CRPO's QA program must include these three areas: professional development activities, peer assessment activities, and professional improvement activities. Professional development includes self-assessment and professional development or learning activities. And this is the part of our program that we are going to be focusing on today. All registrants must also participate in a peer and practice review, or a PPR we call it, approximately once every 5 years. For anyone registered in 2023 or later, you will be selected for your first peer and practice review 5 years after your initial year of registration. So if you are registered in 2023, you will be selected for a peer and practice review in 2028. At CRPO, the first stage of a peer and practice review is to complete an online assessment called the case-based assessment, or CBA. Your CBA results determine the outcome and next steps of your peer and practice review. All registrants receive feedback on their CBA performance and can use that information to direct future professional development. The third component of CRPO's QA program is professional improvement, and this includes remediation activities that are directed by the Quality Assurance Committee.
All registrants must complete professional development or PD activities on an ongoing basis in order to maintain the knowledge, skill, and judgment required to practice the profession. Registrants are responsible for reporting their PD activity to the college every 2 years, so this 2-year period is known as a PD reporting cycle. Your PD cycle is determined by your registration year. So for example, registrants who were registered in an odd year will report every odd year, while a registrant registered in an even year will report every even year. Your first reporting cycle began on your initial date of registration and will end on December 31st, 2025. Following this reporting cycle, your next PD reporting cycle will begin in January and will end on December 31st, 2027. So you will have a QA reporting deadline at the end of every odd year. So this year is 2025. Next reporting deadline would be 2027, 2029, and so on. So before the end of each PD reporting cycle, registrants must ensure that they have completed the following activities: at least one self-assessment, 40 hours of professional development or learning activities, review training on the duty to report child abuse and neglect. At the end of the PD cycle, registrants must submit an attestation form in their CRPO account confirming whether they have completed these activities. We will talk about each requirement in detail in the following slides.
So starting with the self-assessment, this is an online questionnaire that is available to complete at any time in your CRPO user account, and you can access it in the QA tab. The self-assessment is intended to help you reflect on your regulatory responsibilities and identify areas for improvement and inform some of your professional development choices. All registrants are asked to begin participating in CRPO's QA program by completing a self-assessment within their first 60 days of becoming registered. The self-assessment you completed as a new registrant satisfies your first QA reporting cycle requirement. You can complete more than one self-assessment, and you're encouraged to refer to your answers as you plan your professional development or learning activities. We encourage registrants to complete a new self-assessment whenever there is a significant change to their practice. So, for example, if you move from group to private practice, if you change client populations, or if you've recently returned to active practice. Registrants must complete all sections of the self-assessment and provide responses that are complete and related to the subject matter. Ideally, you will complete a new self-assessment at the beginning of each PD cycle to help you identify relevant learning activities that you plan to complete during your PD cycle.
Registrants must complete at least 40 hours of learning activities every PD cycle. Note that at least one of these activities must be didactic and one activity must be experiential. So didactic means that the activity involves a lesson or some kind of learning. Experiential activities means that the activity is based on an experience and observation. At least once every 2 years as part of the PD cycle, registrants are required to undertake training on the duty to report child abuse and neglect. The activities must be completed during your PD reporting cycle, so this means that any activity completed before your initial date of registration cannot be included. Similarly, any activities that you complete after December 31st, 2025 cannot count towards your 2025 reporting cycle. Those hours can be counted towards your next PD cycle that ends in 2027. Registrants must document their learning activities in their learning record and retain supporting documentation from each activity in their own records. So this is known as your professional portfolio. The professional portfolio must include, at minimum, a learning record, log, and documentation to verify your participation in the learning activities. CRPO has a template available on our website for their learning record that we recommend registrants to use, and Hannah has very helpful providing a link to that in the chat. Registrants must maintain the records in their professional portfolio for the current and previous reporting cycle, so that is 4 years. Registrants are not required to submit their professional portfolios unless requested by CRPO staff. So on our screen now, we have an example of what the learning record template looks like. As you can see, we ask that registrants keep track of the activity name and details, the date that the activity was started, and if applicable, the date that it was completed, the number of hours spent on the activity, a description of the activity type. So this is where you would identify the activity as a didactic or experiential activity. And then finally, the type of documentation that you have for the activity. So this could be a certificate, a journal entry, but most importantly, in the template, there is a reflection section that asks you to reflect on the activity and describe the impact the activity had on your practice. The first entry of the template is filled in as an example for your reference.
Registrants often ask us what activities can be counted as professional development. It's important to note that the college does not require registrants to engage in pre-approved activities. You are in the best position to identify your own learning needs and opportunities for growth and invest in activities that will allow you to meet those objectives. Please note that paid work does not qualify as a professional development activity. Professional development activities must be undertaken for the express purpose of your own professional growth and learning. A learning activity can be counted if it meets the criteria listed on this slide. The activity must be relevant to the practice of the profession, credible, and verifiable. So by credible, we mean that the activity was offered by a credible source. So for example, the institution offering an event or the books or journals reviewed are considered credible among your professional colleagues. And verifiable means there is a way to confirm that an event has taken place. So some type of documentation or contact information so we could call the organization and verify that an event took place. So here is a list of examples of learning activities and acceptable supporting documentation. This table is included in the learning record template we shared in the chat, and it is available on our website as well. So some examples of didactic activities include attending education or training programs, engaging in self-study or self-guided learning, and studying for the CRPO registration exam or preparing for the case-based assessment. Examples of experiential learning activities include participating in a study group, attending a peer circle, receiving clinical supervision or peer consultation, and writing the registration exam or writing the case-based assessment. We also want to highlight this particular requirement for you. Registrants are required to review training to ensure they are familiar with the requirements on the enhanced duty to report child abuse and neglect. This could be in the form of self-directed learning or an appropriate course or webinar. As noted earlier, the college does not require that registrants engage in pre-approved activities. You can rely on your own judgment to select a learning activity that meets your individual learning needs on this topic. We do have a list of suggested resources available on our website for you to consider. And thank you, Hannah has just popped a link in the chat that links to our website where we have some suggested resources for you to consider. As with all of your professional development learning activities, you should keep relevant documentation about this training in your professional development portfolio.
So moving on to your reporting requirements, at the end of each PD cycle, registrants must let the college know that they have completed all of their PD requirements. So that is all the requirements that we have discussed so far by completing an attestation form in your CRPO account. This form became available in your CRPO account on November 1st, and you must complete it by December 31st, 2025. You'll be able to locate the attestation on the dashboard when you log into your CRPO account. We have an example of what this looks like on the slide. So there will be a yellow button entitled QA Attestation. Simply click the button to access your attestation. Please be sure to complete the attestation in full and click Submit at the end of the form. If you have successfully completed your attestation, the button will disappear from your dashboard. Please be sure to complete the attestation in full and click Submit at the end of the form. And as I noted earlier, the button will disappear. Here is what the attestation looks like in your CRPO account. Please be sure to read it carefully and select yes or no from the drop-down box to meeting requirements and click Next. After you click Next, you'll be taken to the second page of the attestation. Please read the statements carefully and be sure to click each box in the attestation, then click Submit.
If you need to request an extension or a deferral of your PD requirements, you can do this through the attestation form as well. So in the first page of the attestation, you will need to select No to access the extension deferral request form. Staff will follow up on your request and confirm if you've been granted a deferral or an extension, or if we require more information. An extension provides you with an additional 60 days to complete your PD activities. You can use those 60 days to either complete the self-assessment or complete any remaining activities you need to reach 40 hours. A deferral allows you to defer your requirements to the next PD cycle. It is important to note that if you receive a deferral, you must report all of your PD hours for this and the next reporting cycle. This means at the end of your next PD cycle in 2027, you will be reporting 80 hours over 4 years. As outlined in our QA program policies, an extension cannot exceed 60 days and a deferral cannot exceed 1 reporting cycle, which is 2 years. Extension or deferral from requirements related to QA program components may be granted for the following reasons, and we've highlighted the items that apply specifically to the PD cycle. So deferral or extension can be granted in cases of personal illness, if a registrant is not practicing due to a parental leave for 1 year or more during their reporting cycle, if a registrant is planning on resigning within the 4 months following a reporting cycle deadline, illness of an immediate family member or where the registrant is the primary caregiver, bereavement, and personal crisis or other extenuating circumstances that impact a registrant's ability to cope with additional responsibilities. So very quickly, just to go over the attestation form again for everyone, to request an extension or a deferral, you would need to select No on the first page of the attestation and then click Next. This will bring you to the request for deferral or extension form. And we ask that you complete all the questions in full and click Next. And then you will be taken to that same last page of the attestation where you need to click the check boxes. Well, read the information, click the check boxes, and click Submit. And finally, one last topic before we move on to our question and answer section. We wanted to briefly mention something about what happens when a registrant does not respond to the college. Before any QA deadline, staff send reminders via email, and we do our best to balance the number of communications we send with trying to alert registrants when they have an action to take. After a QA deadline has passed, staff continue to follow up and send reminders, but those reminders might have a fee attached. And ultimately, if the fee is not paid and the attestation is incomplete, a registrant might receive an administrative suspension. And what that means is it's administrative, not a punitive suspension, which simply means that you would need to pay any outstanding fees, complete any outstanding requirements, and then the suspension would be lifted immediately. The PD deadline is purposely set for December 31st to avoid overlapping with registration renewal deadlines, which happen every year at the end of March. So for that reason, we encourage everyone to complete their QA reporting requirements on time, especially to avoid running into overlapping deadlines with registration renewal.
So now we will be answering some of the questions that were submitted to us in advance. So first, what supporting documentation do we need to retain for activities? What about self-study activities like reading a book, etc.? So ideally, a supporting documentation would be a letter or a certificate of completion. However, even if an official document is not available, so for example, for activities involving self-study or self-guided learning, registrants can create their own record of the activity in a journal. For example, we would accept any documentation that lists the following: the activity name and details, the organization's name and contact information, the date or period which the activity occurred, the specific number of hours spent engaging in the activity, and most significantly, a reflection and any notable changes that were made to your practice as a result of the activity. You are encouraged to use CRPO's PD templates to ensure that all necessary information is being documented in your learning record. We shared a link to the templates earlier. And also please note that it is not necessary for you to purchase CE credit options for courses or purchase official CE credit certificates. Registrants can use email confirmations or any other document that include the required information.
Okay, the next question is, can receiving clinical supervision count towards PD learning activity hours? And the answer is yes. Hours receiving clinical supervision can count towards your PD hours as an experiential activity. The hours must have occurred during your reporting cycle, which means after your initial date of registration in 2023 and before December 31st, 2025.
Our next question is, can activities currently in progress count towards my hours? So you can count the number of hours that you have completed for an activity. A course does not need to be completed to be counted as a PD learning activity. So for example, if a course is 20 hours long and you have only completed 10 hours during your reporting cycle, you may count the 10 hours that you have completed. However, you cannot count hours that you do anticipate completing.
Okay, another frequently asked question is, if I am still a student or if I registered while I was still a student, do the same PD requirements apply to me? And the answer to that is also yes. All active registrants of CRPO have the same professional development requirements. Your professional development activities differ from seeing clients and doing paid work, so you don't have to be practicing or employed to complete professional development activities. And as an example, any coursework that you complete after you became registered with the college can count towards your professional development hours.
Our next question. So I've been told by others that certain activities, especially within solo study, such as reading a book, can only account for a certain number of PD hours. Is there a breakdown chart about this? So the answer is no. CRPO does not have limits on the hours an activity could count towards your PD hours. The only requirements is that you participate in at least one didactic activity and at least one experiential activity. We do encourage registrants to participate in a wide variety of activities and select activities that would best address your learning needs.
Do I need to keep track of PD hours beyond the 40 hours? So the minimum requirement during each PD cycle is for you to complete at least 40 hours of learning activities. You are welcome to document any activities beyond the 40 hours if you wish to do so.
Our next question is, what is the difference or overlap between PD and currency hours? So it's important to note that PD learning activities are different from direct client contact hours and from currency hours. Registrants sometimes confuse currency requirements with their PD requirements. So your PD learning activities are part of your quality assurance program requirements, while currency hours relate to your registration requirements. So your PD or your learning activities could be used as currency hours, but not all currency hours qualify as learning activities. The definition of currency can be found on our definitions page on our website, and Hannah has shared a link to our definitions page in the chat.
Okay, the next question. Is it considered acceptable to repeat a previously recorded training? So, for example, redoing a class on a modality. So, RPs are self-regulated health professionals and are in the best position to determine their learning needs. If you feel it would be beneficial to repeat a training, you can absolutely do so. Be sure to include the training on your learning record and reflect on the activity. RPs are encouraged to engage in a wide variety of activities and select activities that would best address their learning needs. We also ask registrants to focus some of their professional development hours on regulatory obligations. So this includes things like reviewing the CRPO professional practice standards, reviewing the jurisprudence manual, learning more about the laws that govern your practice, such as the Personal Health Information Protection Act and the Healthcare Consent Act, and activities such as watching our town hall event or attending this webinar today can all count towards your professional development hours.
Our next question is, can volunteer work be counted towards PD learning activities? So PD learning activities must be an activity undertaken for the express purpose of your professional growth and learning. So if an activity is part of your job responsibilities, then it cannot be counted.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation.